And greetings, happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. With Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace, no Todd Erzin today. He has the day off, moving a daughter into her college surroundings. He will return tomorrow. Before we get to today's show, I want to remind you, our friends at Jace Medical are having an exclusive giveaway right now where you can win a Jace case of medications that you never know might be the next venerable award-winning medications that they tell you can't have right when you need them the most. That's right. You could win a Jace case every year for the rest of your life. No purchase is necessary to enter. Don't miss out. The giveaway runs only until the end of this month, August the 31st. So you can go to jace.com/Deace, Jase, for jace.com/Deace. And also, if you want to get your Jace case while you're there, make sure to use the promo code Deace at checkout for a discount on your order. That's Jace, Jase, jace.com/Deace. Also a reminder, Episode 2 of The Cover-Up, the outstanding series we are producing here at The Blaze, hosted by Matt Kibbe, is phenomenal. Might even be better than the first one, and I told you guys that the first episode was one of the best things we've ever produced as a network. This one features Senator Rand Paul, who comes loaded with receipts aimed at Anthony Fauci and the role that he thinks he played, or that Fauci played, in the creation of COVID-19, the scamdemic, the virus to begin with. If you want to see this, and you do, okay, FauciCoverup.com/Deace is where you can go. FauciCoverup.com/Deace. You'll get $30 off a Blaze TV subscription if you use the code FauciLied. Code FauciLied for $30 off your Blaze TV subscription at FauciCoverup.com/Deace. All right, today's show, we're going to do some Ask Me Anything coming up in the next hour. This hour, I got to get some things off my chest, man, because I am concerned on many, many levels. And I'm going to express why I am concerned, and I will tell you it has nothing to do with polls. I mean, absolutely nothing to do with polls. In the overtime today, I'm going to walk you through one more time, yet again, and we're going to name names, how bad the polling was in 2020. Like, there's a whole bunch of people posting about the New York Times Siena poll is at the gym lifting this morning. It was all over MSNBC and CNN. The New York Times Siena poll in 2016 gave Hillary Clinton 95% odds to win the presidency. And in 2020, overestimated Joe Biden's support by double what he actually had. Is that a good poll, Aaron? A good polling legacy?
No.
Your last two, you weren't even close. You weren't even on the board. You weren't, forget hovering around the margin for error. You were just an error. That's all you were. At this point, and I'll walk you through this in the overtime today, if you're a subscriber. Another reason why you want to go to FauciCoverup.com/Deace. Use the promo code FauciLied for $30 off, because you'll be able to watch that overtime today too. But at this point, with a very small list of exceptions. And yes, Rasmussen is on that list, by the way, even though their methodology is clearly biased for Trump. They're the only poll that ever consistently oversamples his support. But the other bias is so bad that Rasmussen is still, despite their Trump bias, one of the most accurate pollsters of right now. We're literally down to like 3 polls you can trust. And how many of these do we publish every day? The polls are now the election version of studies show masks work to stop the spread of coronavirus. They're just all part of the fake data war of the PSYOP. We'll get into that in the overtime today. No, I'm worried about narratives and fundamentals. I'm very worried. And I want to explain to you why I'm worried. I'm going to do that much of this hour. And I'm worried on 2 fronts. One of them we'll talk at the bottom of the hour with our good friend Bob Vanderplatz. I was not concerned that the Trump campaign had gone so meh on the life issue that it might cost us this election, until the press conference the former president gave a couple of days ago. And he was asked specifically about Amendment 4 in Florida. Because I got to tell you, the reaction that has been within my network and circle of friends to his comments there have been suboptimal. So how vital is the pro-life vote? And if you're about to email me, they have nowhere else to go. Mitt Romney 2012 called and said, here's your sign. Our people don't respond to that. You have to give them reasons to vote for you. You can ask President Mitt McCain how you have nowhere else to go, how that works. It does not work. That's not what Trump did in 2016. Looked in the camera and told 100 million people, I'm going to overturn Roe v. Wade. And he did it. So I'm going to walk through some of that data and those numbers for you with our good friend Bob Vanderplatz at the bottom of this hour. In a few minutes, I'm going to share something, some personal concerns I have. But first, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the Trump campaign, a.k.a. J.D. Vance, who made a media blitz over the weekend and is more on message, it seems, than his running mate at the top of the ticket. Vance appeared on CNN, CBS, and ABC's main Sunday shows and dealt deftly with hostile questioning.
Well, John, we have to start with the fact that we have a wide open southern border because our border czar actually set a lot of open border policies. They suspended...
she's not actually, she wasn't the border czar.
Oh, that was what the media called her. She assumed the title. She had control over a lot of our border policy at a time when they were suspending. Let me finish, John. The time they were suspending deportations, they stopped Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, and they reinstituted catch and release. They basically threw open the gates of our country, and now we have a ton of fentanyl, a ton of people suffering.
But how are you going to get 10 to 15 to 20 million people
Well,
out
the
of the
first
country?
thing you have to do is to stop the bleeding. Again, on the Harris administration, I got to push back against something a little bit, Margaret, because when these comments where I said parents should pay lower taxes via the child tax credit came out, the Harris administration immediately jumped and said, we disagree with this. The Harris campaign said, we disagree with this. So did they want the elimination of the child tax credit, or were they just being careless in responding to remarks that I made 3 years ago? I don't know. They should clarify it, maybe in an interview with you, but of course Kamala Harris refuses to do interviews with anybody.
We hope to have her on and ask her about that.
You've now asked me 3 questions about comments that I made 3 years ago. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she supported policies that open the American southern border. I wonder what Kamala Harris thinks about the fact that she lied to the American people about Joe Biden's middle facility for the office. You are interviewing me, Dana, because I respect the American people enough to sit down for an interview.
I appreciate that.
Kamala Harris has been the nominee for 3 weeks. She hasn't sat down for a real interview.
Believe me, we are asking. You're not going to get a disagreement there.
But the point is, Dana, you've got me for 15 minutes or however long you have me. We should be talking about public policies that matter. How are we going to lower inflation? How are we going to reduce the cost of food and housing? How are we going to close down that southern border? We've talked so little about that. We've talked a lot more about a sarcastic remark I made 3 years ago. I think we should talk about the issues that most Americans care about.
Joe Biden was interviewed by CBS, and he seemed to confirm there was a hard but silent coup to remove him.
Look, the polls we had showed that it was a neck-and-neck race. Would have been down to the wire. But what happened was a number of my Democratic colleagues in the House and Senate thought that I was going to hurt them in the races. And I was concerned if I stayed in the race, that would be the topic. You'd be interviewing me about why did Nancy Pelosi say, why did someone, and I thought it'd be a real distraction.
Nancy Pelosi was talking to the New York Times recently, and check out what she has to say about that letter Biden supposedly released a few Sundays ago announcing his intention to bow out of his re-election race.
I didn't accept the letter as anything but a letter. I mean, there are some people who were unhappy with the letter. Let me say that some said that some people were unhappy with the letter. I'll put it in somebody else's mouth. Because it was I don't even know, it didn't sound like Joe Biden to me. It really didn't. So
the Harris campaign has now issued a statement regarding VP candidate Tim Walz, saying he, quote, misspoke when discussing his military service. Apparently, he's been misspeaking for the better part of the last 20 years. The retraction or clarification came after the Harris campaign itself circulated this 2018 video of Walz talking about gun grabbing.
And we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
The clips of Walz's repeated instances of misspeaking continue to flow out over the weekend. Here he is back in 2018 2007, again misrepresenting his rank in the Army National Guard.
By being elected from this district and being a retired command sergeant major, I am the highest ranking enlisted soldier to ever serve in Congress since the beginning of this nation. And I said, for me, it's not a sense of pride for me, it's a sense of responsibility.
According to the New York Post, the chaplain of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz's Field Artillery Regiment said there's no excuse for the Democratic VP pick to have abandoned his National Guard unit before a critical deployment, not even running for Congress. Retired Captain Corey Bjertness, now a pastor in Horace, North Dakota, told the Post, quote, "In our world, to drop out after a warning order is issued is cowardly, especially for a senior enlisted guy." Kamala, your thoughts?
What's your favorite curse word?
I can't say it. It starts with an M and it ends with Not ER.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, your thoughts?
They're asking me about this waltz from Minnesota. Here's the thing. As Florida governor, I learn a lot about other states because when people leave those states, they tell me why they left those states. And I remember during COVID, the absolute frustration that people had moving from Minnesota because of how they were being treated. You know, this is a guy that's out there, he's got this line in the stump speech saying, you know, our neighbors can do what they want, mind your own damn business. Fine, then why did you set up a snitch hotline for neighbors to report on their neighbors for violating your draconian COVID restrictions? That's not minding your own damn business. That's government overreach.
The Center for Medical Progress is back with another undercover sting operation, this time targeting Planned Parenthood of the Gulf Coast, where individuals admit they're still selling dead baby body parts.
6 months or a year ago, you told me about the proposition. And so now every time I do a D&D, I'm like, oh, there's some law.
Yeah, you already know.
I'm like, yeah, I have like a leg for you. I'm like, oh, shit. If other people were to hear me, they'd be like, you're a evil.
There's a lot more where that came from. You can follow the Center for Medical Progress on X. A couple of odds and ends. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin has issued an executive order mandating paper ballots be used exclusively in Virginia presidential elections. America's household credit card debt soared to $1.14 trillion in the second quarter of this year. No matter how you slice it, that's not good news. Authorities in the UK say they'll attempt to extradite Americans who are perceived by that government to have broken laws around so-called hate speech online and incitement of violence. And finally, this from the Babylon Bee. UK issues arrest warrant for social media user @real_Pope Francis with the $sign over use of gay slurs. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Trust and Will. If you want to get your estate planning under control, there's no better source. I mean, we have used Trust and Will to update on our end, and my wife, she just raved about how flexible it was. And easy it was to use at the exact same time. That's why the sign says right there, estate planning made easy. Trust and Will made creating your will easy. Like, it's literally like lounging on the couch easy. Maybe a little harder than that. All right. Get 10% off at Trust and Will and A&D. All right. trustandwill.com/Deace. trustandwill.com/Deace, where they have an overall rating of excellent and thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. They've got an excellent review from my wife as well. All right. Creating your will or trust doesn't have to be a chore. Protect what matters to you most in minutes at trustandwill.com/Deace and get 10% off plus free shipping. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/Deace. So I've got about 16 and a half minutes here, and I want to articulate a few things that I am concerned about. And I want to start actually back to front in articulating these concerns. I have a not insignificant amount of friends around the country that are so frustrated right now. They're beginning to tell me things like, I think we're better off if we just lose at this point and just be done with this entire thing so we can all move on. When I talk about this being the biggest worldview election difference I've ever voted in, and I've used this talking point over the last few days of would you rather live in New York City 1996? And what do I mean by that? I mean, it's a melting pot. It's not a place necessarily where if you're a Christian or a conservative, your worldview is ascendant, but it is welcomed. It is not shunned. It is not targeted. You can have a Bruce Wilkerson sitting there with his church right off of Times Square bringing the gospel. And nobody's giving you protest. The white guy, Rudy Giuliani, can beat the black guy, David Dinkins, in a mayoral race. It doesn't cause race riots. It's Americana still. It's a place that still represents so much of America that 5 years later the Islamo-fascists use it as a symbol of their attack against the great Satan. It's still Americana. It still loves the country. Or America as represented by San Francisco, Minneapolis, and, as you see at the end of Aaron's montage there, London 2024, where our worldview now is targeted by the coercive powers of the state for extinction. That is a chasm of difference. But let me make it even, if that doesn't resonate with you, let me make this even more personal. I want to give you a scenario. And I don't think it's way off the map. For the last 4 years, we have projected for the first time in American history feebleness to the rest of the world from the presidency. We have projected corruption, incompetence, confidence, inspiration, clarity. We've never, ever in the history of this country used the highest office in the world to communicate the feebleness of this country. And as a result, Israel now finds itself going from Abrahamic Accords to the worst invasion on its soil in 50 years, which could very well end up escalating into a wider conflict that engulfs us. We have been playing daily footsie on is today the day that Putin just gives up and drops a nuke in Ukraine for the last 2.5 years. What do you think might happen if we follow up feebleness with retardation? I've got a son-in-law I really like, and my oldest daughter adores, and has given me a granddaughter that I adore too. So let me make this just really personal. What are the odds that my daughter's a widow? He's in the military, by the way. What are the odds that my daughter's a widow if we win or they win? I don't know what they are. I just know they're a lot higher. And there are things that you can sit around and we can complain about. But if we don't do it in the context of what is it we're trying to win here? It's not for a team. It's not for Trump. It's not revenge. If that's you, I don't care about any of that. I care about the country, which is you, and my family. I care about that. What's best for them and for you. I'm getting nothing for this. I get accused all the time now of being a sellout. I'm eating crap sandwiches all the time, man. I'm eating poop pitas. I'm not getting anything for this. Hell, I did Bannon's show on Friday at Chip Roy's request, only to have them then for the first time post the entire show on Rumble and then edit out my segment. Why? What did I say? That Trump should get the biggest evangelical turnout of all time. But it's not about what you say over there. It's about who's saying it. That's so petty and high school. It's just beyond irrelevant. I don't care about any of this crap. I just want what's best for the country and my family. That's all I want. I'm not gaining anything from this. If anything, my career has been severely limited for the last 10 years by Donald Trump and my unwillingness to not just kiss his ass unconditionally. So I'm not gaining anything from this. I just want a better country. That's all. And I think the odds are really high that the stuff right now that people are wishing was better and need to get better, if we lose, every day in the back of our heads, there's a ticking clock. Is today the day that the little demon with the bowl haircut there in Pyongyang decides, you know what? They got a retard over there in D.C. running the country. They went from feeble to retard. They went full retard. Let's see what Seoul's doing tomorrow. Let's find out. Or maybe the people over there in Beijing are like, today's the day. Let's call upon Taipei. see what's going on with Taiwan. And sooner or later, man, when that kind of stuff starts going down, the things right now you wished were better about Trump and his movement get really irrelevant. Those are earth-shattering, ground-shaking days. 2 years ago, half of Israel wanted Benjamin Netanyahu impeached or put in prison. Right now, the country's pretty unified that they want him to essentially lay waste to Hamas. Why? Because October 7th happened, and it made a lot of those other things that they were really pissed off about and sick of and tired of really irrelevant. So I think we need to start with that context as an endgame, the possibility of that, the escalating possibility of that. And it's with that said now that I'm going to say the next few things. I'm very concerned about this campaign. I want it to win. I can't want it to win more than it wants to win. Right now, looking at the numbers, I've gotten tons of emails from you guys. What are we doing? Every time I log on to my Gmail, every time I log on to this or that, all I see is a Kamala digital ad. So, when you look at the numbers, we are currently being outspent by 700% on digital advertising. Our candidate is a billionaire. That's inexcusable. 700%. 700%. From July 1 to August 10th, 2016, Trump did 22 rallies. This exact same time frame, this time, he has done 8. Well, Stevie got shot. Agreed. That's a viable consideration. But when you add it also into we're being outspent by 700% on digital ads. Did you see the level of messaging there from J.D. Vance? That was a machine. That's way better than anything Trump has done in months. Which is good. That's good, but ultimately people vote for the president, not the vice president. I understand he's gotten older. You know, there are periods and stages in your life where 8 years makes a big difference. From 12 to 20, big difference. Same thing happens at the end of your life, too. Big difference from 70 to 78. Big difference from 75 to 83 if you're Joe Biden. August at this point as a month is a total loss. We're being outspent absolutely everywhere. We're being outworked absolutely everywhere. But great, I'm seeing great trending videos of Trump getting another ace at Mar-a-Lago. So that's good. This isn't going to work. Okay? And many of us are not 78-year-old billionaires that when this is over, worst we'll do is go face house arrest at Mar-a-Lago and spend the rest of our days just putting out more viral videos of aces. It's going to be our sons and daughters and sons-in-law, in my cases, that are going to be sent off to places like Taipei and Seoul because there's a retard in the White House. And the enemies thought, let's roll. We cannot have the vice president doing better messaging than the president. And it's not even close right now. Like, it's not even close.
Can't have the primary challenger, to the extent that we actually had a primary, doing better messaging.
Correct.
Than the candidate who won.
Correct. Father Time is undefeated, okay? And I understand right now if we're doing, when you look at pivotal figures in pop culture, it could be argued Elvis is the most pivotal figure in pop culture in the 20th century, and it could certainly be argued that right now Donald Trump's the most pivotal figure in pop culture so far in the 21st century. Eventually, you got to Fat Elvis, and he's not the same guy that he was when he's in 76. He's not the same guy there with the third chin belting, at Caesar's Palace that he was 8 years ago in 68 doing one of the highest rated television specials of all time. Still to this day. But he is still Elvis. And every now and then, even though he's not what he was 8 years ago, dude still brings tears to your eyes when he belts out Glory, Glory, Hallelujah and In the Ghetto. That's kind of what we're at right now. All right, we're dealing with a guy that's not what he once was. And none of us are going to be what we once were at 78. That's just the way of things. But we have to be better than this, because here's now where the polls come in. And I would urge you guys not to, if it's not Emerson, here's what I would do if I were you guys. If you want to follow polls, and I'll get more into detail on this in the overtime today, take Emerson and Rasmussen, and I'll explain why in the overtime today, and just do your own two-person polling average of what those two polls say, and that's going to give you a way more accurate portrayal than anything else in the industry right now. But it's the narrative that's being built here. We're being outworked. We're being outspent. They are now, in addition to that, they are conjuring polls to create a narrative that I don't believe exists. That suddenly, 3 weeks ago, this was the most unpopular vice president since we've ever been measuring it. And now suddenly
she has a mandate.
Yeah, she has a mandate, and she is a deliverer with stone tablets. That's a psyop. It's as fake as the COVID psyop and all the other psyops of the last few years. But this is what it's about. It's about creating a narrative so that they can steal this thing again. The reason that Biden had to go, it's not because Democrats were concerned that they could not come up with the votes they needed, but they didn't have a narrative to justify it. They already have so many advantages. Pop culture, they're in control. Corporate media, they're in control. The electioneering process in the most pivotal states, they're in control. It's either at the county level, like Maricopa County in Arizona, or the state level, like in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Our margin for error is just smaller. We got to do better. And we can't play into this narrative. Because when they run the same game plan at us on November 6th, or November 5th, that they did the last time, we're going to want to counter that. You know what they're going to say on the track we're on now? Where the polls showed this was razor close. Your candidate didn't do as many rallies. He spent more time arguing with the Heritage Foundation than he did talking about his own assassination. Did I say anything that's not true so far, Aaron?
No.
You can't play into their narrative. He did this with COVID. He played into their narrative. And it wasn't until he got COVID himself and saw Regeneron and some of the things in the hospital that we could have been treating people with and weren't, that he finally got on the right message. But by then it was too late. We were well into October, I thought, if I remember correctly. He's losing the plot right now. Now, the good news is this is a highly unpopular candidate. And today's not November 5th. The bad news is November 5th is coming, and there's only so many days. She's way more polished in a scripted setting than any of us want to admit, and we need to admit that. Do not look at film of your opponent and see what they do well and lie to yourself that they can't do that well. That's how you'll lose to your opponent. She's way more polished in the scripted settings than we ever imagined. She couldn't execute at this level as a presidential candidate herself or up until vice president. There is some spirit of Jezebel inspiration happening there. She's being carried by forces beyond herself. We have to be better. We have to be better than this. This won't work. We're playing into their narrative. And I want you to hear my heart on this, man. I'm not gaining anything from this other than yesterday we're out playing cornhole in my backyard. Me and my son-in-law, my daughter, my son, and my granddaughter sitting over there on the patio with my wife. And this is as Americana as it gets, man. As a man, you work your whole life hoping you're going to have moments like this when you're my age. And I've got one sitting right there in my backyard yesterday, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. And in the back of my mind, I cannot help but think though, this is in danger if we lose this. The stuff we've taken for granted for decades. This is way worse than if Hillary had won in 2016. She was at least a serious person, seriously corrupt, but also a serious person respected on the world stage. She had been Secretary of State. She had been basically a co-president. This is a retard. And that's on the heels of a feeble, senile dementia patient who's already been tested and failed in Ukraine, who's already been tested and failed at his own border, who's already been tested and failed on October 7th of last year. The stuff that we take for granted, you can't take for granted. Like that moment in my backyard yesterday. After that, I went for my 75 hard long walk with my wife after everybody went home. And all I'm saying to you is everything I said to her in private last night. And you know what she said? For the first time, I was willing to vote for him because that's, what you think, and I respect you. For the first time, you've actually got me thinking we have to vote for him. It's necessary. But we can't want this more than he does. We can't work harder than they do over there. They need to be better. So when I say Patriot Mobile really takes the resources you give them when you switch from your un-American mobile phone provider to the only pro-American mobile phone provider, and they take those resources and proceeds and reinvest them back into your value system, back into the kingdom, I mean, I can just prove it to you. I've seen it. I mean, I just saw it this summer. So early June, I go down to Tennessee, speak at a movie convention in Pigeon Forge there, and in the very hall where we're doing the Nefarious discussion is sponsored by Patriot Mobile. I speak a month and a half later at my buddy Bob Vanderplatz, whom you'll hear from here in a minute. A month and a half later, I speak at his event in Des Moines, hundreds of miles away. And the segment that I come out, the afternoon session I come out and speak in, brought to you by Patriot Mobile. I mean, that's just a couple of anecdotal confirmations that they do take these resources and reinvest them back into our values. On top of that, though, they have a fantastic product. They have a full U.S.-based, meaning you can understand them, customer service team. We have used Patriot Mobile. We put it off for years. There were years I talked about them on the show because I believed in their mission, but I'm like, man, it would be such a hassle with a 5-person family and different lines and everything else to make the switch. Finally, one day, T-Mobile let us know, hey, we're going to start censoring text for COVID misinformation. And I called Patriot that day. I said, all right, we're making the switch. I mean, no matter how much of a hassle it was, the switch was done, finished, completed in about 15 minutes. There was no hassle. So if you're a veteran or first responder, let them know when you go to make the switch. They've got extra ways to say thank you for your service. All of us can get a free month of service today for making the switch at patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Free month of service if you use the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. So I told you at the top, today is the day I'm airing my concerns. And I want to air them on August 12th. So that I'm not doing the show that I fear on November the 6th. I don't want to do that show. Okay, so I'm going to air them now, and I'm trying to do it in the most constructive way. I'm trying to discuss this as I would like with my kids, where they need to know the urgency of the moment, right? But I don't want to demoralize them either and think that dad can't be pleased, or this is impossible, or I've screwed up so much, so I might as well just keep screwing up because there's no way out. You don't want to do that either. So I'm trying to strike that balance, and if I'm not doing the best job of that, I'm asking for forgiveness up front. I want to win. I can't make that any clearer. I've walked my entire precinct. I looked on my app. I've walked 36 miles in the last week. The first week of doing 75 hard for the second time, I've walked 36 miles. I've walked my entire precinct. Can you guess which yard has the only Trump sign in my entire precinct? Bob Vanderplatz, can you guess?
Steve Deace.
It's mine. It's mine, guys. Mine. It's my yard is the only yard in my entire precinct that has a Trump sign in the yard. It's mine. So, Bob, this is what I wanted to talk to you about this week. Welcome to the show, by the way.
Yeah, by the way, yeah. But anecdotally, I was at Clear Lake this past weekend with our kids. And this time, 2020, there was Trump flags everywhere at Clear Lake. Clear Lake is northern Iowa. It's Trump territory. Mm-hmm. These are the people that would have hosted boat parades. Remember those boat parades, boat rallies for Trump? Mm-hmm. They would have hosted boat rallies for Trump. I believe Darla said we counted 3 on our boat ride around the lake. And so that is concerning as well. The enthusiasm factor, say, for Trump at this point as well. Just like you said, you've walked 36 miles in your precinct. I don't see a lot of Trump signs. The good news, I don't see a lot of Harris signs or probably any Harris signs either.
Correct. But in our state, there's not going to be a lot. It's not even on the map this time. So to me, this is more about the energy we're creating on our own side, which is a great segue to what I want to talk to you about this week. So there's been a lot of talk, rightfully so, about, I guess we'll call it so far, this unorthodox approach that Trump has taken to the life issue. All right. We saw this in Iowa earlier this year. He just said to audiences out loud, I don't think we can win on this issue and we have to win. I mean, he just literally said it out loud. Okay.
And after 2022, he blamed the pro-life issue.
Right. And I've walked through that data. That data is just simply not true.
Exactly.
The governors who signed pro-life legislation, including ours, way outperformed Republicans as a whole nationwide in that cycle. It's just simply not true. Okay. And then he also said, well, the pro-lifers didn't show up after they won Roe v. Wade. Also not true. The congressional ballot, generic congressional ballot in 2022 was actually +3 our side. We showed up more than they did.
We always do.
We lost independents again. Well, Steve, that's where we lost. No, independents don't vote on abortion. I can just tell you this. Guys, there's a reason why I'm not saying let's run on repeal gay marriage. I'm not ignorant of political considerations. I've done nuts and bolts of politics. I understand that we at some point have to take the ideas we have and make them sellable and winnable. You know why I'm not suggesting we run on repeal gay marriage, even though I'm all for it, okay? You know why I'm suggesting we not run on that? Because I'm just telling you right now, we'd get killed with independence if we ran on that. I'm just telling you we would, okay? So if you want to morally do it anyway, I got your back, okay? But strategically, I'm telling you, it's a bad issue to run on right now with independents.
It's not a winner right now.
Okay, independents don't vote on abortion. Never have, never will. If anything, if they take any position on the issue, it's that they're abhorred by abortion on demand. Okay, and that brings me to Amendment 4 in Florida. We went through the convention. I was curious to see, hey, how is NACA highlighting the life issue and taking it out of the platform? And everybody I know, including all the pro-lifers that I know, walked out of there and told me it's the most unified Republican convention they've either ever been at if they're my age, or if they're a boomer, since 1980. Okay, yep. So maybe it won't be that big of an issue, and his record will be enough that people will reward him for his record before as president than his rhetoric now as a candidate. Okay.
And the reason he achieved unity, you just said it, is that he has a record.
Yes.
He's the one who appointed the 3 justices that overturned Roe v. Wade. He did other things. He spoke at the pro-life rally. He's got some street cred now as a record of a president that I will advance the issue of life for you. So they trust him even as he takes it out of the platform and makes it a non-issue in the campaign.
He has the best presidential record on the sanctity of life for the unborn of any president ever, and I'm not even sure who would be second.
Right.
Okay? So that brings me to Amendment 4 in his home state of Florida. So if you don't know what Amendment 4 is, we talked about this. We had Governor DeSantis on here. It is a kill-em-all bill. Okay, it's as long as there's a pinky toe in the birth canal and like the cuticle of the pinky toe, like it's just dangling there. Okay. Kill the baby right there. Just, take it out. Snuff it out right there if you want. All right. So here are some bullet points about Amendment 4 in Florida. There's no definition of viability, no definition of healthcare provider. Okay. No definition of patient's health, no parental consent. So your teenage daughter, without your consent, can go and kill her child, and at any point doesn't have to see a healthcare provider, doesn't need your consent, none of that. It destroys parental rights. I mean, this thing is just wicked, purely wicked. Trump is asked about this last week at a press conference, refuses to give his position on this amendment. Now, I can tell you, when New York was passing the kill 'em all bill, that you can kill them, the same thing. As long as the baby's at full term with a pinky toe in the birth canal, you can kill it. I was talking to Donald Trump at that point in time on a regular basis because he was gearing up to run for president. And the level of disgust that was directly communicated to me, hey, I'm not I'm doing your Trump. I'm not the most pro-life guy, Steve, but that's just disgusting and vile. Yeah. Okay. Now, in his own home state, we can't even get him to say, you should vote no on that amendment. It's really bad. Hey, everybody has their own conscience. I think that every state should decide. And I'm just telling you, 80% of Americans don't want abortion with no restrictions, which is true. That's actually what the data shows. Instead, he didn't do that. And then he actually gave an analysis saying that he thought it was actually going to win. I don't know what happened to your phone, but within my network around the country, my phone has gone nuts about this for the last 3 days. And for the first time, it dawned on me, we might lose this election on this issue. Now, what do I mean losing this election on this issue? Let me define that for you, and then I'm going to give you the rest of the time. If it's not just the size of the slice of the pie, but the size of the pie, okay? If Donald Trump gets 76% of evangelicals like he did in 2020, he's going to lose. If he gets 80% of them like he did in 2016, he is going to win. But it's also overall turnout. For example, if he gets 80% of them and turnout is below 25%, like it's 20% of the electorate or white evangelicals, it doesn't matter what percentage he gets, he will lose. If it's above 25% like it was in 2016, he will win. It doesn't take much. If 2, 3, 4 points of our people are just like, screw this, man. I've eaten enough poop pitas from this guy on this entire cycle, and now he won't even oppose this. It doesn't take much, especially because I'm not even asking Donald Trump to be pro-life, Bob. I'm asking him to take a position that he's articulated to me individually in the past he has. 80% of Americans have, that we cannot have abortion in a constitution without restrictions. Nobody's for that except the most radical of Democrats. That's all I'm asking him to do, and then free up people like Byron Donalds and Matt Gaetz and Rick Scott so that Ron DeSantis isn't the only office holder of consequence in Florida talking about this, so that we can beat this thing. That's all. Because if he doesn't do that, my fear is we will leave at home just enough, just a few points, as I just demonstrated, is all that it takes. And that's the difference in winning or losing this thing. Am I being paranoid?
Well, first of all, you're not being paranoid, and all the data that you just referenced is right. And it's a winning issue for a lot of reasons. But on my Twitter, when I said, I'm going to take Donald Trump at his word, and that he's going to vote against Amendment 4 in the state of Florida, if you go back to the June 27 debate with him and Biden started to push him on abortion, and Trump turned it. He turned it, and he put Biden on the defense on the abortion issue. And how do you do it? Your side is for abortion all the way to the time of birth, sometimes even after birth. You want taxpayers to pay for it. There's no parental consent that's needed. And so therefore, you're the extreme on this issue. I'm not the extreme. All he's got to do is stay with that mantra. He also said, Steve, you recall this in Arizona, when Arizona said, we're now going to enact our pro-life bill, saying that life begins at conception. And he said, listen, that's way too harsh. But the states, I gave it to the states can figure it out. Well, if you gave it to the states, even though I disagree with that, you gave it to the people's elected representatives, and some of those are federal office holders as well. And the federal government does have a role here, just like in the issues of slavery and other places. But when he says, I'm going to give it to the states, now it's in his home state, the state of Florida. So give us clarity on this. They are being extreme. Look at what this amendment says. That amendment, what you just read, what it says is 3 exceptions: rape, incest, and whatever my circumstance is. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if you're a healthcare provider, you're not a healthcare provider. I don't care what the issue is. All the way to the time of birth, I get to abort this baby. He has an opportunity here to highlight this as a campaign issue. This is an extreme issue. It's exceptionally out of touch with America. You just pointed out 80% of Americans are here with this one. He should embrace this and run with this and make the abortion a winning issue for him versus a losing issue, which Kamala Harris wants to make it for him.
And to me, we can't control the bias of the media. We cannot control the ballot harvesting system they have in place. I mean, we had 4 years to do something about it and did almost nothing. Okay. So the window is passed. I know they're running 100 lawsuits. It's August 12th. All right. Nothing is going to substantively change. Voting starts like in 2 weeks in North Carolina and Virginia and Pennsylvania. Okay. So the die on that is cast. We can't control that. All right. We cannot control that popular culture is taking a woman that a month ago was the most unpopular vice president of all time and turning her into a herald for the new age. We can't control that. What we can control are the unforced errors that we play into that cause our own people to not get invested in the outcome, so that Steve Deace, former Free the Delegates activist from 2016, is the only guy with a Trump sign in his yard in his precinct in one of the reddest states in the country. Why? Because you won't even sign on to things like abortion on demand without exceptions and restrictions is bad. These are bare minimum requests that we're asking here.
So you go back to the June 27 debate, which I highlighted. Then you go to the convention where they take it out of the Republican Party platform. But they're giving him all kinds of leeway here, giving him all kinds of rope here. The reason is you appointed 3 justices that overturned Roe v. Wade. The left is never going to forget that. So now embrace the amendment about voting no for this amendment in the state of Florida. Give Ron DeSantis all kind of cover. Give all the other political allies in Florida all kind of cover. But also make it a national issue. Highlight it. Guys, read this amendment. This is what they're for. Abortion up to the time of birth. You said, Steve, 80% of Americans are not in favor of it. He can turn this into a winning issue for him. However, if he doesn't, if he says, listen, I'm going to vote for Amendment 4, which I believe is unconscionable, or I believe the more likely of, listen, my vote's private in the voting booth. Terry Branstad did that on the 3 justices. My vote is private. I think now you tamp down the most loyal base that the Republican Party has, and that's the pro-lifers. You cannot tampen them down.
I agree, and it's completely unnecessary, because here's the thing: he's going to get attacked with all hundreds of millions of dollars of ads for the overturning of Roe v. Wade and just being the GOP nominee, whether he does the bare minimum here or not. What we're doing right now is we're getting the worst of both worlds. He's getting attacked for being the president that overturned Roe on their end, and then on his end, he is dampening down his own pro-life base. When they want to support him, they want to turn out for him, just give them the bare minimum here. Amendment 4 in Florida is bad, and I'll be voting against it. And I think if you live in a state that passed something like what Michigan did, I mean, that's just immoral, and most America thinks that.
And here's, Steve, where you and I were just talking about, who's advising him on these issues. This one doesn't matter. This one is just not hard. Hey, listen, I overturned Roe v. Wade. Why? To give the power back to the states. Mm-hmm. It's back in the states. Florida's got a disastrous amendment in front of it. I, as president, will be voting no on that. I hope other Floridians will join me on that issue. It's a win-win as you point Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the extreme.
Good stuff, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we are dealing, folks, with scant percentages. If this is they're trying to create a narrative that justifies them coming up with the votes they want on November the 5th. So, hey, Trump got 74% of the white evangelical vote instead of 80. Didn't turn out his own base. That justifies us winning Michigan by 15,000 votes of provisional ballots. He didn't turn out his base. We can't play in to their narrative. We can't do anything about the narrative that they're going to craft and create. What we can do is whether we're going to play into that. Whether we're going to do 8 rallies in the summer of 2024 when in the summer of 2016 we did 22. Whether we're going to get outspent by 700% on digital ads right now. That's happening right now. We are being outspent by 700% on digital ads. And that's before we even talk about where are those digital ads, even the money we're spending on it. Are they in True Social that nobody's on? Or are they on Gmail, which everybody is? You see what I'm saying? It's one thing to be outspent by 700%, but if we're spending a bunch of that money on a platform nobody's even on, then it's a double whammy. These are things we're doing right now to play into the narrative that they want to craft for how they just happen to pull this thing out all over again. First thing to do when you're digging yourself a hole is to put down the shovel. Hour 2 is next. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre. Todd Erzin has the day off. He will return tomorrow. And you can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. If you'd like to do that, you can email us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter or X, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. Speaking of X, tonight at 8 Eastern, the richest and man in the world and the most famous man in the world, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, are going to get together for a live interview, which I think could very well be could that be the most watched singular event in the world this year? Maybe even more than the Super Bowl, Aaron? Is it possible?
It very well could be, and the real Donald Trump account on X is active again. Now, I think it's his campaign. I'm quite certain it's his campaign and not him. But they've been posting a bunch of stuff this morning so far.
So let's hope the landing gets stuck on that. Because here's the thing, Elon's not going to kiss his butt, but Elon wants Trump to win. He's made that pretty clear. So he's gonna try to, give Trump an opportunity to. I mean, maybe set him up is too strong, but the questions are largely going to be framed by someone who wants Donald Trump to win the presidency.
Correct.
Okay, so this has got to be one, man. We got to stick the landing. Got to walk away from this. That even the East German judge has given us a 6.0 here. Okay, so let's be praying for that here tonight on X and Twitter. If you are listening to the podcast version, you can also, if you wouldn't mind, leave us a 5-star review. So many of you have. Thank you. We appreciate each and every one of them. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're tuned in on iTunes, you click on follow, and that'll make sure that every time we do one of these new podcasts, it'll show up in your feed every single time. And a lot of you have done that. A heck of a lot of you have done that. So we're very appreciative of each and every one of you for doing so as well. Want to let you know about our friends at Focus on the Family. If you are looking for something that is very practical in helping your family stay on the narrow road during these chaotic times, that's where Focus on the Family with Jim Daly comes in. Of course, Focus on the Family has decades of trust. Compassionate stories of redemption as part of their legacy. And Jim Daly connects you to biblically sound advice on marriage and parenting that is relatable, practical, and genuinely interesting, so you can listen, learn, apply, and then thrive in Christ at FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. That's where you can go. FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com and start making a difference in your family's life today at FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. We're going to have a lot more election talk here this hour, but when this is all over, we're probably all going to need a break. So I want to let you know there are still a few slots left for an event that Daniel and I are doing with our friends at Patriot Academy after the election down in Texas. All right, November 16th through the 18th, Daniel Horowitz, myself, and then Rick Green will from Patriot Academy. We're going to be hosting a 3-day constitutional defense course there at their Patriot Academy campus outside of Fredericksburg campus, or Fredericksburg, Texas. And so this is going to be everything from weapons training to constitutional discipleship as well. If you would like to attend this, patriotacademy.com/Steve is where you can go and register by going to patriotacademy.com/Steve. Again, that's patriotacademy.com/Steve. Hope to see you there after the election. So before we get to Ask Me Anything, Aaron, I want to give you a chance if you have anything to say based on me basically just essentially pouring my heart out here in the very first hour of the show. What are your thoughts?
So in Christian music radio, it is a common thing, a common practice to send, and I do not agree with this whatsoever. I think it's part and parcel why that product, by and large, doesn't have more mass appeal. There is a practice where you will come up with a composite or an amalgamation of a woman that you are trying to talk to when you are on the radio. And that's by and large who Christian music radio, that's their base. It's sometimes single moms, but it's the mom on their way to and from soccer practice, dropping their kids off from school. That's why it sounds so feminine. That's why. And sometimes they give this woman a name. Sometimes it's Linda. Sometimes it's Karen. Sometimes it's fill in the blank with a regular white woman's name. Sometimes they even put a picture up of Linda in the studio so that the DJ can talk to Linda over on the wall as she's on her way to pick up the kiddos from soccer practice. It's really creepy, really weird. But a lot of cases, especially in the Midwest and southern states, if you look at Christian music ratings, kind of works, kind of does work. Who is the picture up on the wall in the Trump campaign? Who is their base? If you put the Wonder Woman lasso of truth around Donald Trump and forced him to come up with a composite image of who his base voter is, who do you think he would say? I don't know. Again, we're talking about Donald Trump. When you asked any high-ranking official on the Trump campaign, who is your base? I think you get a lot of different answers. That's kind of a problem. If you ask me, fill in the blank with Republican nominee over the last 40 years, certainly during my lifetime, certainly during yours, who is the ride or die base of this party? Ride or die. It's the pro-life voter. To me, this is kind of analogous. It's harder to do because it's a national campaign, but analogous to the lead up to the 2018 midterm elections here in the state of Iowa. Now, our governor, who I got to say hi to and thank her the other day at the state fair, Kim Reynolds, she was still somewhat of an unknown commodity. She was the lieutenant governor under Terry Branstad, who is the rhinoest rhino who ever rhinoed. I don't care what state you came from, what state you're talking about. He is the rhinoest rhino who ever rhinoed. So she filled in while he was the ambassador to China, I think it was, for the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. Still some of during those 2 years of an unknown commodity. And really in the last part of that election cycle, Kim Reynolds, she could have gone the rhino route, but somewhere in her campaign, maybe it was her herself, I tend to believe she had some sort of a spiritual awakening. She just decided, man, she recognized that the Christian conservatives in this state, again, so this is a harder analog to make at a national level, she decided this is my ride or die base. I'm just going to go with them and talk to them as much as I possibly can and communicate with them as much as I possibly can during the home stretch of this election. And guess what? Iowa is one of the reddest states in the union after that. Those are who sent her over the top in what was a very disappointing evergreen tweet midterm election nationally for the Republican Party. She recognized who her base was. The Trump campaign, I'm convinced, does not know this. I'm at the point now, and I'm the guy, all of us have said this in various stripes, you cannot compromise on the life issue. You really can't. We're in a position now, though, where bullets are flying, and it's like, we're not going to have any issues to compromise on if this is allowed to take hold, where we've got bullets flying at Donald Trump. But man alive, I'm in the position now where it would be better to not say anything about this issue at all than to do whatever the hell they're doing right now. Because you're not milking the assassination for all it's worth. The guy at the top of your ticket isn't doing what the guy on the other half of the ticket is doing and staying on message and beating the living daylights out of Kamala Harris on all the major networks on Sunday.
Hell, Trump won't even say that J.D. Vance is qualified to be president when asked.
Yes.
Okay.
So now you're at the point where a month ago you should have been like, okay, how much are we winning by? You're at the point now where you're like, you should be asking, can we get our base to show up?
In the numbers we need.
In the numbers that we need. So now you put yourself in this position where you're on the record. You're saying you're going to take a position on this amendment in Florida. And man alive, if we're asking it's August, middle of August now. We're asking, as you said, the bare minimum of Donald Trump on this issue, which is your base. That does not really bode well. I pray that he comes out and says, as president, I did what y'all asked me to do. I overturned Roe. You can even go back to the talking point. I don't know if it's real or not. Liberal, conservative scholars all agreed this needed to be kicked to the states. It's now kicked to the states. And this, maybe there's another amendment in another state that's not quite as extreme, and maybe I would vote for that. But in this state, in my home state, this is too extreme. The Democrats have gone too far, and here's why. And that's why I'm voting no on Amendment 4. I pray to God that he comes out with that. Because I'm going to tell you this. If it is not a support of this bill, you're going to have a hard time. I'm in on Donald Trump right now. I'm going to be reassessing things.
You're compositive. Let me talk about who I think the target is that's going to determine this election, because you got me to thinking about that. I think that this election is going to be determined, by and large, because independents, we don't necessarily know what their turnout's going to be. I think it could be 25%. I think it could be more than 40%. We really don't know. We're still dealing with two candidates whose favorables are not great. But one factor that I think would really determine this, because a lot of these people live in suburbs, the generically conservative evangelical or Catholic voter whose conservatism is largely defined by they hate abortion on demand. And they're not MAGA, but they're not communists. They kind of view themselves as, I don't want to be the kind that votes for Trump, otherwise I get to razzed at the tennis club. I get razzed at the country club. I get razzed in the atrium of my suburban Pottery Barn mega church. 3 to 4 points of those people that are also going to be suburban voters, many of them women, but also their husbands too. And giving them an example of this kind of barbarism that Democrats are for in his own home state is the kind of thing that convinces those people they have to vote for you when they don't want to have to vote for you. All right, let's get to Ask Me Anything. Facebook questions solicited over the weekend. With Todd gone, my oldest daughter, Anastasia, took the honors of picking the questions. I have not seen any of them at all. Okay. Aaron, you have the questions, so let's let it rip.
We will begin with Michael Burton. Do you think Project 2025 will be a good thing for our country, or do you think it's disgusting?
When I read of Project 2025, I thought it was the absolute best blueprint for any substantive, significant draining of the swamp that I have seen yet on the right. That's what I think.
Yep.
It solves. And I didn't know what to think when I started to read it or look at it. I didn't even know what it was until all the hullabaloo, blew up. Again, I've actually been somewhat defensive of Trump on this because I do think some people at Heritage committed the cardinal error. And I know what that error looks like. I made the same error on the Cruz campaign. I made myself the story with my comments on Carly Fiorina. You can't ever do that when you're the help, right? No servant is greater than his master, as Jesus once said. You cannot be the administrative support staff, whatever you want to call it, and you're more of the story than the candidate or the campaign is. You can't do that, okay? So I understand why the Trump people getting hammered by the media for this, and then finding out. I was told by a reliable source that one person got told that one donor got told if he donated to the Project 2025 effort, he'd be ambassador to a country he wanted to be ambassador to in a Trump administration. You cannot be doing stuff like that. All right.
This is the star running back on a football team. You're not the quarterback, but you are a really good running back.
Correct.
And you take the ball and you think, man, I got this, man. And then all of a sudden you're 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage trying to juke guys and oh crap.
Yep.
Do you execute that player for that mistake?
No. But you do need to let him know you don't call the plays in the huddle, son. The quarterback does. Right. Okay. But you also don't you don't sacrifice the next 10 plays because you're pissed at the running back for running his mouth either. Think of the Super Bowl. All right. That clip of Travis Kelce on the sideline screaming at Andy Reid, right? Okay. I'm sure that didn't end well. 15 minutes later, Travis Kelce, I think, scored a touchdown or something like that. Okay. So you don't punish the whole team over and over and over again because somebody got uppity and outside their skis and thought they were more than they were. I don't have a problem with even scolding them publicly about it once. It's the carrying on about it over. It's bringing it up at the rare rallies he's doing nowadays, bringing it up just totally on your own without being asked, oh, by the way, let me bring this thing up again. It doesn't help at all.
They're still running talking points I saw over the weekend. Why won't Trump disavow Project 2025? You're going to get nothing. You've already got nothing. You got negative integers.
Let me along these lines, because it ties into also everything that we have been saying. I just received this email from Bill Olliger in Davenport. Christine Bohannon is proving your abortion point in my congressional district. She has run countless ads against Marionette Miller Meeks, painting her as Steve Deace on abortion, with no exceptions. And we both know Marionette Miller Meeks is Romney on abortion at best, but it doesn't matter. You either embrace the life issue and flip it on your opponent, they support it on demand, blah, 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 or you end up hiding on the issue and you're now being put on the defensive by Dems. Now, I've known Marionette Miller Meeks for nearly 20 years. She might not even be Romney on the issue. Let me give you a little story about Congresswoman Marionette Miller Meeks. Came into my studio once on WHO for an interview. And she was on the phone with her sister, who was pregnant past 40. Now, Marionette Miller Meeks is a doctor. So her sister calls and says, this conversation's happening in my studio on my show. And I'm not new at this. I'm 4 years into the show. Everybody knows who Steve Deace is in Iowa politics by this point. And where I'm coming from on the life issue. In my studio, she brazenly tells her sister, well, do you want to keep the baby? Okay, then you probably shouldn't get the amniocentesis because it's too much of a risk at your age. You're walking into my studio having a conversation and say, do you want to keep the baby? Mitt Romney is not even going to do that. All right? And yet, she's getting destroyed in her own district like she is me on abortion. Because if you're voting on this issue, you're either me or you're Planned Parenthood. Anybody who's in between may have an opinion, may or may not be favorable to my opinion. It's not an issue that drives them to vote. We're doing things that are hurting ourselves and playing into their narrative. The ongoing clapping back at heritage over something beyond obscure is a point. And man, the contrast with JD is incredible. The first month on the job as running mate by JD Vance is the best I can ever recall from a Republican VP nominee, and maybe a VP nominee I've ever seen. His speech captured the imagination. His messaging has been on point. The moment where he just walked right up there to the press when Kamala was on the same tarmac. The dude has been a boss. Absolute next level talent. And in stark contrast to the rest of the campaign. That's not good. You know, when JD was put on the ticket, you're hoping, let's hope he's just Whitesnake opening for Def Leppard in the summer of '88. This is now Elton John and Billy Joel touring together in the summer of '98. And in many respects, he is dramatically outshining him. And in return, when Trump is asked directly, you think JD Vance is qualified to be president, he won't even answer that. What are we doing here? Okay? Let's get to the next question.
This is from Rob Brewer. My preacher preaches the word, the whole world. He tells the truth and isn't afraid to point out the spirit of the age, but he wears a sweater vest. What should I do?
I needed this. The timing of this is good. I'm in a dark place, man. I tweeted to our colleague and friend Sarah Gonzalez last night. I'm going to go cut myself. Okay? I needed that laugh. Thank you. The sweater vest was made for man, not man for the sweater vest. Okay? All right. So do not hold. Who knows? Maybe your pastor's a Gen Xer like me. I used to wear sweater vests with my initials monogram like Alex P. Keaton because I wanted to be Alex P. Keaton when I grew up. So maybe that's his kind of thing. I don't, but if he's preaching the word, man, it doesn't matter if he's up there in a bathrobe.
He has a sweater vest dispensation.
Yes, it may just be we all have our crosses to bear. Maybe the sweater vests are to him what Crocs are to me. Okay, but if he's preaching the word, man, it doesn't matter what he's wearing as long as he's wearing something. Okay. And it's not obscene. So when in doubt, put the word of God first. But I liked that, and I needed that laugh, so thank you.
Brett White asks, Steve, I've heard you talk about several key demographics for this election, except for one, the vaccine injured. Do you believe this is a demographic that will sit this election out or cast a protest vote for RFK Jr.? If the numbers are what you have represented, it could be hundreds of thousands of people who see Trump as the godfather and original cheerleader for the vax. Why or why not is this concerning for the GOP?
Brett, I think this is an excellent question, and I don't have any data on this yet because it hasn't been tested yet. Okay? Remember, the vax was not rolled out to the public until the winter of 21. And so the election had already been determined. And there was great hope for the vax. Our position at the beginning was if you are in a serious autoimmune deficiency, like my mom, you should consider it. Everybody else should just wait and see in real time what the data shows. You had Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was initially aggressively rolling this out, looked at the data because they have one of the highest elderly populations in the country. Then they looked at the data of what this thing doesn't do and then what it unfortunately does do. And now they're still, if you can believe this, they're still the only health department in America that is actually telling the truth about this shot. In the year of our Lord, 2024. So this is a relatively new phenomenon. Do I think it has the potential to alter the outcome here? Yeah. I mean, the 2016 presidential election was decided by less than 78,000 votes. The 2020 presidential in the decisive states. The 2020 election was decided by less than 50,000 votes in the decisive states. So it would not take very many people. Like, let me give you one state, Wisconsin. And this goes to what I was telling Bob Vanderplots and you guys last hour about demographics and pro-lifers. And it is the slice of the pie, but also the size of the pie that you're getting the slice out of. All right. Donald Trump won Wisconsin by about 28,000 votes in 2016, if I remember right. 20,000 of those votes were because Hillary Clinton got just a little bit less of black turnout than Barack Obama did in terms of the percentage of the vote, but the percentage of the electorate. No, I have it backwards. I'm sorry. Hillary got pretty much the exact same percentage as it relates to the percentage of black voters that Barack Obama received, but the percentage of black turnout was down by a couple of points. For example, Wisconsin. In Milwaukee County, 20,000 fewer black people voted in 2020 or in 2016 than voted in 2012. And I just told you that Trump won Wisconsin by about 28,000 votes, which means just that demographic not turning out at the rate they were before produced about, what is that off the top of my head, about 85% of the margin of victory that Trump had in the entire state. So yeah, it's something that could make a difference. Again, something else completely unavoidable. Or I'm sorry, completely avoidable. My bad. Something that, I mean, heck, let's take it back even a step further. Is there even a primary if Donald Trump at some point comes clean on the backs and says, man, no. I blew it on that one, and these people screwed me, and I'm going after them when I get back in there? No. We're probably not even having the GOP primary at all. Probably not even having it at all. Or it's just Trump versus Nikki Haley, which is another version of we're not even having the GOP primary at all. Okay? So, yeah. Again, that's another unforced error, unrepentance on an obvious mistake. Could that make a difference? It could. It could. You know? And I tried that. I thought we'd be able to use the primary. I milked every relationship I had before the primary ever began. I got nowhere on that. And with the former president's operation. So you can't want people to want something more than they do. You can only control what you can control. But yeah, it's just that's not a demographic we have been tested with yet. So I have no way, Brett, of quantifying it in terms of numbers. But it's an excellent question.
Nancy Ortel Goldie asks, what would your dream vacation be?
I mean, it's not what it once was, unfortunately, but I mean, the memories we still have. And I mean, we were living paycheck to paycheck at the time, and I got I was in a class action lawsuit I was not aware of. Because I used to own the Iowa State Fan publication, and apparently the group that we belonged to ripped a bunch of the publishers off and lost a class action suit. And so I got a call one day telling me, hey, you got like a $15,000 settlement or something coming your way. And I had promised the family at the beginning of that year that I didn't know how we were going to do it, but we're going to be able to take everybody always wanted to go to Disney World together. We were going to do that as a family. 6 months later, I get this call out of the blue about this settlement. And that's what we used. I mean, we went $15K. We spent it all. We went carte blanche, man. Spent an entire week, got like a villa with a laundry. I mean, we still have incredible memories from that very first vacation. So I got to come up with something that would top that. The Detroit Lions are in the Super Bowl, and it's like in Arizona or Florida. So that I kill two birds with one stone, Aaron. We get to snowbird for like a week, get out of the, get a winter break.
So you do the whole week of festivities.
Yep. And then we're down there the whole week for everything. The whole family goes. Because even Zoe, who could care less about football, the festivities would definitely be Zoe's vibe. Okay. And so we're out of the snow and the winter for a week, getting a break. And it's the Lions in the Super Bowl for the first time at the same time. And the whole family down there enjoying the festivities all week long. That would probably be it. Yeah.
Yeah, that adds up. Let's move on. Matt Cooper asks, what scriptural verse that people frequently misuse bothers you the most?
Only one?
Yeah.
Only one?
We've done a couple of evergreens on this. I can't remember if they both run.
Yeah.
But.
Like for example, the do not fear thing. There is, first of all, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I would imagine you don't leave your windows and doors open and unlocked all night long. I would imagine you got a weapon for a reason. I would imagine you don't have your kids play with light sockets for a reason. I would imagine you don't run red lights during rush hour traffic in densely populated urban areas for a reason. All right? This idea that we're supposed to have zero fear, that's not what fear not is about. It's about the kind of fear that creates anxieties, depressions, that causes us to be disobedient to God, to lose our faith and understanding of God's sovereignty. All right? But there is such a thing as healthy fear. Okay? When someone breaks into your home and you have no idea what their intentions are, you should act on the fear that they mean the worst possible harm to you and your family. They're not just there to steal, a cup of porridge because they're hungry, but they mean a greater amount of harm. So that would be one. And Jeremiah 29:11. To me, the misuse of Jeremiah 29:11 is the American church in a nutshell. Just completely ignore the entirety of the book of Jeremiah, which is about one of the darkest moments in all of God's covenant people's history, which is why he's called the weeping prophet after all. Just ignore all of that. Ignore the fact that Jeremiah refers to a place called Topeth, which is which is a Hebrew idiom for hell, as the place where they went down to the valley of Topeth or Ben Hinnom and cast their babies into the fire for demons. That's like at the introduction in the book, setting the stage for what's in the rest of the book. We've completely self-edited all that out and taken Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, plans not to harm you, but to give you a hope, plans to help you prosper and give you a future, and turn that into like every homeschool kid's graduation stereotype slogan. If that's not a symbol for the American church in this era, I don't know what is. Don't preach the book of Jeremiah line by line. Ignore it because it would freak people out. But take one line out of the middle of it and then completely misuse and misrepresent it as if the whole book is like a book of hope. You're being hope-filled. That's the book of Jeremiah, the book of hope-filled. The book of FM Christian music stations, looking for the soccer mom who the toughest thing she's going to do today is get the kids to school by 8 a.m. in time for her Pilates appointment.
You think you're joking.
I'm not even joking when I say that.
You're not.
Okay?
It's true.
And whether her husband will like the new dish she's cooking tonight when he gets home. And we can't do anything that might rattle her cage whatsoever at all. But she's got to giggle between 6 to 9. Or his 4 to 7 afternoon drive. That's what I used to do. And that's what the misuse of Jeremiah 29:11 has done. We have taken a book that is basically a book of a divine spanking and turned it into like a life coach phrase. So that would be my answer. Today, I might have a different one the next day. More in a moment. Well, there's no question that Americans are hurting on multiple fronts right now, and healthcare costs are completely out of control. Obviously, government is not the answer. So what is? Well, thankfully, Lassie Health is here to shake things up. That's L-A-A-S-Y. L-A-A-S-Y for Lassie Health. Now, it's not health insurance. It's access to health care you want, but without all the red tape and restrictions and inflated costs. Coverage plans start as low as $30 a month. You get transparent pricing, comprehensive coverage tailored to your needs, access to healthcare services without breaking the bank. There's no annual or lifetime caps on services. You can start a plan at any time. And even if you get the bare bones $30 a month plan, you get over 400 prescription meds for free, free unlimited virtual mental health counseling, free 24/7 virtual urgent care, lab test for up to 60% off, imaging test up to 75% off, procedures and surgeries over 50% off. So as you can see, Lassie Health is a game changer. Check out affordable plans that put you in control of your healthcare at healthylink.com/Steve. For a limited time, get your first month for free. That's up to $100 off of eligible plans. So get healthy, be healthy, and then stay healthy without breaking the bank at healthylink.com/Steve. Once again, healthylink.com/Steve. All right, Aaron, let's get back to some Ask Me Anything.
And we'll continue with Patrick Monty, who says if Walz loses, will he take it out on us in Minnesota? He's still got 2 years as a governor.
I think he's already done quite a bit, man, from what I heard at the banquet that I keynoted earlier this year. Can I just say this, too? Am I the only one getting serious Denny Hastert vibes from Tim Walz?
Remember what my prediction was on Friday?
Is that what you were alluding to with that prediction?
I mean, guys, he allegedly, now, he's embellished a lot of things about his career. We've established that so far in the week since we've known that he's the running mate. He's embellished a lot of stuff. So he could be lying about this. But my understanding is, as a high school teacher in the 90s, in the Midwest in the 90s, Tim Walz was the leader of the Gay Straight Alliance. I didn't even know that was a thing in the 90s. Huh. Okay. Sure, there's nothing there.
Yeah. And these sorts of activities in the schools have been havens for grooming, for example. So what you're saying is, at the very least, dude was a creepy herald pushing an agenda that has led to, drag queen story time hour and other kinds of grooming, for example. At the very least, he's a simp for it. That's what, Aaron, you're saying. I'm saying, there's some serious Denny Hastert vibes there, man. Next question.
Next up, we go to Jeremy LaForce, who asks, would you ever run for public office? Why or why not?
I don't know. There's a limit. I've been asked this many times in my life. There's only a few offices that I think actually give me more influence than what I already have. Because I'm in a position here, even for a show of our magnitude, and this is even more true if you're Tucker Carlson or Dan Bongino or Glenn Beck or Charlie Kirk, and you've got, or Ben Shapiro, and you've got, a top 5 or 10 level show on the right. But the ability to foment multiple versions of your belief system within people is frankly more power and influence on a daily basis than most members of Congress have, unless you're going to be, in the Senate or the House leadership. And something tells me, Aaron, I don't think if I could get elected, one of those positions would probably be leadership material in Washington, D.C., right? I'm going to be more of the Rand Paul, Chip Roy, perpetually stuck on the backbench material, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to ask yourself, now, because there's this possibility too. Ted Cruz is still doing his show. I think he's still doing it right now, right? He's running for re-elect.
Yeah.
Is Ted still producing a podcast still now?
I think so.
So, I don't know why I'd have to give this show up, but I just think, frankly, much of what you're asked to do in D.C. is a waste of time. So then compared to the time I could devote to this and in helping people like Chip Roy and even more so state legislatures and legislators around the country. But I've also said over the years, one position that I could be tantalized by is governor. Because I do think the amount of power wielded there. I mean, just look at a few states. If you lived in Wisconsin, Georgia, Florida, and Iowa, just those 4 states, if you lived there in May and June of 2020, you lived a dramatically different... I guess you could throw Texas in there probably too, to some degree. I mean, Abbott wasn't brave, but he did a great job tailgating Ron DeSantis that year. If you lived in those 5 states, you lived a life dramatically different in the spring and summer and even into the fall of 2020 than probably what? People that lived in 30 or 35 other states. And then there'd be other states where it was kind of in between, right? How? Well, Wisconsin was the state Supreme Court, the old state Supreme Court. Those justices, some of them got voted out. But the old state Supreme Court mandated the state to be reopened. Those other 4 states, it was because of the governors they had. Completely changed the way of life. I mean, Iowa was the first state to welcome back high school sports. In the summer of 2020, Amy and I went and got a hotel for my birthday weekend to get away. Hotel was overrun with high school teams and athletes from across the country that had come to Iowa for summer AAU competitions that couldn't be held anywhere else in the Midwest. Pool was overrun. Yard was overrun. It was great to see, by the way. We were looking for signs of life the summer of 2020, but that wasn't going on almost anywhere else in America. So that's a position where the amount of power being wielded would be worth potentially getting out from behind the microphone. And I've said that many, many times. But it would take something like that, because I think more power is wielded here. Now, I am intrigued by the idea, could you do this and still keep the show like Ted is doing? I don't know. Maybe you can, But it would depend on the office for me. That's pretty much the answer I've always given when asked that, isn't it?
Yep.
The new
wherever that you can find the most power.
Yeah, the new wrinkle is Ted now keeping his podcast while being in the Senate. Because if that's an option, okay. That changes things a little bit.
Jim Kinman is up next, who asks, what percentage of the conservative side of the political spectrum understands that we are on the brink of extinction? What percentage thinks folks like you and I are crazy religious fundamentalists?
I think that there's a lot more people than ever before that understand we're in an existential crisis here right now as the country, and this isn't tenable. A long-term, this isn't the stuff of long-term arrangements. So I think that has improved greatly, particularly since 2020, both all the events of that year, from the scamdemic to the mostly peaceful George Floyd funerals, and then to whatever the hell that election was other than up and up. What I am concerned about, and this ties into the second half of your question, is how much of the right truly understands what the origin of the existential crisis is. And I say this on 2 fronts. Number one, the idea that we are seeing manifestations, I really believe this, we are seeing manifestations of spiritual warfare right now. Stuff that usually is relegated to the unseen realm, to our naked eye, we are seeing made manifest. Like Kamala Harris is the spirit of Jezebel incarnated. I mean, look at, if you watch, I defy you, anybody in this audience, go pick the last 3 years of Kamala Harris clips and compare them to her performance on the stage at these. Aaron, have you seen some of her performance on the stage at these rallies?
Yes.
It's not the same person. Keep in mind, we were one of the few people that have ever seen Kamala Harris campaign because we live in Iowa. She couldn't even get to Halloween in an Iowa caucus cycle. She was laughed out of here. Everybody within the sound of my voice received as many delegates in the 2020 Democratic primary as Kamala Harris did. Now, all of a sudden, she is delivering lines with polish and timing. Now, there's a reason why they don't want to get her in an unscripted scenario.
This was crystallized last week. I believe it was in Michigan, where, I'm not Now, I won't make that comparison, but it was like Schmeagol and Gollum. Like there was the one scripted, very, very very likable side, if that's possible, of her personality, and then those pro-Hamas orcs started chanting at her, "I'm in charge. I'm talking. Shut up." That was basic. I'm exaggerating, but that was crystallized last week, where she's in one personality, and then once she's forced to get off script, she's completely different.
Yes. But she couldn't even execute a script, guys. Now, by comparison, it's flawless and polished. I think that's supernatural. Steve, are you saying? Yes. Yes, I am. Just to be clear, yes, I am. I think more and more people on the right are waking up to that reality. On the side, the spiritual manifestations of what we're up against on when it comes to evil. But as is typical of human nature, we struggle to see it when it's ourselves or our own side or our own biases. And this is the true test of discernment. Are you willing to confront the beam in your own eye rather than fixated on the speck of dust of your neighbors? For example, I saw a story last night we have not yet seen in America, and if we have, I'm not aware of it. But if we have, and I didn't know, that just reinforces the point I'm about to make. Did you see the story about this Catholic cathedral in Buffalo?
Yeah.
It was sold. Yeah, you can sell churches. Yeah, it was sold, but not just sold. It was sold to Islam, and it will be turned into a mosque. This is what has happened all throughout Europe. We just had the Olympics in Paris. 2% of France is evangelical, 2%. And there have been multiple cathedrals converted into mosques in France and all throughout Western Europe. Here's the thing you need to know about that. That's not the spirit of the age, most likely. That's not the enemy. That's not Democrats. That's not liberals. That's not secularists. The enemy and his minions have no dominion over the church. The church was built on a rock, and not even the gates of hell will prevail. It cannot. There is no jurisdiction or dominion of the enemy within the church. It's the only transcendent institution God has ever created. And it's Christ and his bride. So when you see things like churches with rainbow flags on the altar and priestesses saying, "When I killed my baby, I felt the Spirit of God blessing me," that, I believe, is divine judgment. That's right out of the part of Revelation we almost never study anymore, the letters at the beginning. And in one of them, Christ says, "I will come to you. If you do not repent and return to the former things that you once did," the preaching and teaching of my word and sacrament, for example. "If you do not do that, I will come to you and take away your lampstand." When there is darkness in the church, or the church just is given over to a false religion, that is a result, I believe, of pruning. That is God doing it, not the enemy. And I think if we don't understand that God will cause or allow suffering, as any good father does, if the child refuses to learn the lesson the easy way, then he may have to learn it the hard way. And it'll break your heart as a dad. You don't want to have to do it, man, but you need to be willing to. Because you love them enough that they must learn this lesson, and you understand the consequences for them long term if they do not. And then the example you are allowing that child to set to your other children by not punishing what everybody understands is bad behavior. You'll get more of it. And God isn't just a good father, he's a perfect one. And I think we need to be very aware of not falling for going back to what I said about the book of Jeremiah. You know, Abraham Lincoln once famously said, "I'm not saying that I'm on God's side, I'm praying that we are on his." That's the perspective you want to have. We're not entitled to God bless America here. We're not entitled to that. It's not a birthright. And if we don't see that there could come a time, and maybe it's now, I don't know if it is, it might be, that God's patience has worn out. Because if it's one thing to make hell an enemy. Do not turn the only undefeated and the most powerful being in the universe into your enemy. Don't do that. And the people at Jeremiah's time didn't see that. That's why they didn't repent. And they just kept self-righteously rebuking Jeremiah as he's calling them to repentance. We're the chosen people. We don't have to repent. No, that's actually why you need to repent more. And it's not that you need to repent, you get to. That God will actually forgive you if you do. It's a privilege to repent. It's not a chore. You don't have to die in your sins. That's the part I think much of the right still doesn't understand. Hey, one more time, our friends at Jace Medical are doing a giveaway this month where you can win a Jace case for life for free. Every month for the rest of your life for free of venerable medications that are likely the next ones they'll try to ban and take away from you right when you need them the most. All right, if you want to enter this, there's no purchase necessary to enter at all. Don't miss out. Contest ends at the end of this month, August 31st. Enter today at jace.com/Deace, Jase, jace.com/Deace. And that's also where you can go if you do want to buy your Jace case, and you can expand it to medications that you need as well. They've expanded their menu of medications there to make sure you've got the peace of mind of knowing that you've got a backup that at least gives you some margin up against the spirit of the age. All right, use the promo code DACE at jace.com for the discount. Jace.com/Deace. That's where you can both go and buy a Jace case and enter for free for a giveaway for a free Jace case for life. Jace.com/Deace. Use the promo code DACE at jace.com/Deace. All right, I'm going to stick around here for the overtime. I've got to give you guys some data on why you shouldn't trust almost any of these public media polls. We'll get into that for subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow. Todd will be back tomorrow as well. Until then, Romans 8:28.